Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, Ivory Coast President Alassane Ouattara is on track for an election win as the opposition cries foul and declares the creation of a transitional government. Also, Tanzanian opposition leader Tundu Lissu is briefly detained after having lost last week's election to incumbent John Magufuli. Lissu's Chadema party and others have been calling for mass protests against the outcome of what they say was a fraudulent vote. And Zimbabwe's First Lady denies being linked to a gold smuggling syndicate. Auxilia Mnangagwa's name comes up in a case linked to a well-known businesswoman who was arrested last week trying to smuggle 6 kilograms of gold through Harare's airport. But first, the stakes have been raised in Ivory Coast's tense political landscape after opposition leaders announced on Monday that they would be creating a transitional government ahead of the release of official results from last week's presidential election. Incumbent Alassane Ouattara is expected to claim a landslide victory from Saturday's poll. His critics say that he wasn't constitutionally allowed to run for a third term in the first place, and that results are skewed because of an opposition boycott. At least 30 people were killed in pre-election violence, and their fears of a repeat of a civil war that left 3,000 dead following elections in late 2010. Sam Bradpeace has more.
Huge news coming here from Ivory Coast. The opposition have declared a National Council of Transition. They're actually not expecting to declare a government for a couple of hours, but they have said they are going to put in place an interim government. They said they don't recognise the mandate of Alassane Ouattara. They say that it's over, and it really quite big news coming out of Ivory Coast today. In response, the government has said that the opposition know what they're letting themselves in for. The government said, a spokesperson we spoke to said that quite simply this declaration of a transitional council and an interim government is illegal, unconstitutional, and that the opposition candidates who declared it will fall under the full force of the law.
So is the government taking it particularly seriously? So it's clearly dismissed it and said that this is something that they don't have the right to do. But should they pursue this, is this setting the two paths onto a collision course?
Yes, absolutely. The struggle between the opposition and the government is intensifying. That's without doubt. The government spokesperson I spoke to, Mamadou Touré, described it as a masquerade. This declaration of a transitional council, he said it was a masquerade. And I think it has to be said that the government are taking it seriously, despite the use of that term masquerade. They're taking it very seriously indeed. Back in 2010, there was a similar situation. And back then, a decade ago, the country fell quickly into a post-electoral crisis in which at least 3,000 people died. So yes, it's yet to be seen. This really is a breaking story. So it's yet to be seen whether we will see arrests or quite what action the government will take.
Sam Bradpeace there for us. Now, Uganda's president has formally been nominated to run for elections in February's polls. Yoweri Museveni, who's run the country for 34 years, is Africa's third longest ruling head of state. The 76-year-old's running for his 5th term after a 2017 constitutional change removed an age cap on the presidency. His main challenger will be popular musician and political novice Bobi Wine. He's got a large following amongst young voters and is due to be named as the opposition NUP's candidate later this week. He's accused Museveni's government of persecuting him ever since he became an MP 3 years ago. Now, Tanzanian opposition leader Tundu Lissu was briefly detained on Monday. Several of his colleagues were also held the week after President John Magufuli defeated Lissu in polls and was re-elected. Lissu's Chadema party and others have been calling for mass protests against the outcome of the vote that they say was fraudulent. Mkelwa Shachwayu has more.
Tanzania's main opposition party has said its leader, Tundu Lissu, has been arrested earlier today outside the German embassy in Dar es Salaam, where he was seeking diplomatic protection. His lawyer says he was since released. Lissu's arrest follows the arrest of his party's chairman and several other party officials. They had called for demonstrations against the results of last week's general elections, which they say were rigged. President John Magufuli was announced the winner. The Electoral Commission says he won more than 80% of the vote and his party won 97% of the seats in parliament. A heavy deployment of police seems to have deterred opposition supporters from attending the planned protest. Some of the opposition politicians who were arrested were charged with terrorism and so were not eligible for bail. Opposition and rights groups say President Magufuli's government has become increasingly authoritarian over his first 5 years in power. The opposition leader Lissu has himself survived an assassination attempt 3 years ago. Few foreign press and observers were allowed to cover the polls. Tanzania's press has been heavily censored. Internet services, including WhatsApp and Twitter, have been restricted for the last week. The U.S. State Department has said today that it's deeply concerned about the voting irregularities and violence by security forces. Opposition are now calling for a rerun of the elections. The ruling party has been in power since independence from British colonial rule nearly 60 years ago. Magufuli was seeking a second term in office. The constitution limits presidents to 2 terms. However, the majority that his party has now won in parliament is enough to be able to change the constitution and remove presidential term limits.
Mkawa Shachwai there for us. Now, in Algeria, constitutional reforms have been approved in a referendum to which record low numbers of voters turned out. Fewer than 1 in 4 of the electorate cast a ballot. The exercise was seen as a bid to neutralise a popular movement that's been calling for fundamental change in the country. However, the Hirak movement urged supporters to boycott the referendum. Yuka Roya has more.
It didn't take long to count all the votes at this polling station in Algiers. And the result was as expected.
63 تم التصويت بنعم لتعديل الدستور. دوكا نكملوا لي بي في تاعنا ونديروا اللي لازم ان شاء الله.
The final voter turnout was 23.7% nationwide, a record low, with the Hirak youth movement calling for a boycott. The government had framed the referendum as an olive branch to the pro-democracy protesters who pushed out President Abdelaziz Bouteflika last year.
جزائر جديدة التي نتمناها الجميع لأبنائنا وأحفادنا. فالصوت للشعب، الصوت للمواطنين والمواطنات، فلكل واحد الحرية باختيار الاتجاه الذي يريده ويتمناه لبلده.
The revised constitution sets term limits and purports to guarantee more freedoms and civil rights, but pro-democracy protesters say it doesn't go far enough. It keeps key appointments in the hands of the president and gives more powers to the military. Opponents of the amended text were not allowed to campaign, while the Yes camp was given airtime on state TV. Dozens of Hirak activists, bloggers and journalists have been arrested and jailed in what protesters condemn as examples of repression in Algeria aimed at silencing the opposition.
Amnesty International says that at least 54 ethnic Amharas were killed by rebels in western Ethiopia in a schoolyard attack. The country's official death toll puts the figure at 32. Militants reportedly gathered locals together before shooting them. Ethnic violence has been one of the biggest challenges to Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. He's denounced the killings and blamed Oromo rebels for the raid. It happened in Gulisu district near the South Sudanese border. While South Africa's main opposition party has elected a new leader, John Steenhuisen takes over the Democratic Alliance after the party's first black leader, Mmusi Maimane, resigned last year, saying that he was being hindered by those who didn't want to see a black man running the party. The DA has been trying to shake off its image as representing the interests of white South Africans. Steenhuisen's hoping that his appointment won't cost the party support from black voters and says that he stands for unity and opportunity for all.
I did not run to become the leader of this party for its own sake. I'm here today because I want to take the DA to greater heights in a fight for our country, where each and every citizen has the power to build a dignified life.
While Zimbabwe's First Lady, Auxilia Mnangagwa, denied having links to a gold smuggling syndicate. She and her son Collins were named as potential owners of 6 kilograms of gold found on a well-known businesswoman who was arrested last week at Harare Airport trying to leave the country with the contraband. Henrietta Rushwayo is the head of the Zimbabwe Miners Federation. Ryan Truscott has the story.
She doesn't engage in illegal gold smuggling. She said if the police have incriminating evidence against her, they should present it. The police have also issued a statement. They say a claim implicating members of the first family is false and malicious. That claim was made by Gift Karanda, a man arrested alongside Henrietta Rushwaya last Monday. In addition to illegally possessing gold, he's now facing an additional charge of obstructing the course of justice by trying to implicate the First Lady and her son Collins. Critics say well-connected individuals use their influence to smuggle precious minerals outside Zimbabwe, and Rushwaya, who is still in custody, is reported to be related to President Emmerson Mnangagwa. The president himself tweeted today that no one is above the law, but critics, including the spokesperson for the main opposition MDC alliance, Fadzai Mahere, say the police were too quick to issue a statement clearing the First Lady.
Ryan Truscott there for us. That is, though, all we have time for Eye on Africa for now. Thanks for joining us, and do so again if you can. Take care.
I'm Gene Kang. I'll be live in Los Angeles, California.
I'm Melissa Caberly with live coverage from Phoenix, Arizona.
Hi, I'm Clovis Casali, and I'll be reporting from Miami, Florida.
I'm Florence Vilmino, and I'll be live from Philadelphia in Pennsylvania.
And I'm Jessica Mazurier reporting from New York City.
I'm Ketevan Gorjestani in the nation's capital, Washington, D.C.
On election night, watch all the news unfold on France 24 and France24.com.